Thank you, Cyril, for taking out the time. Really excited to have you here. First of all, I would want to thank you and your father, Nishith sir, for all the effort that you have put, because of which Bitcoin can still be bought in India. So, as they say that we all stand on the shoulders of giants. So you are one of the giants. You and your firm is one of the giants, and your father is one of the giants on whose shoulders we all Bitcoiners and the Bitcoin community is standing. So, off the bat, first, thank you very much for all that you guys have done in this space, and would love you to introduce yourself to our audience.
So, hi, my name is Suril Desai. I'm a lawyer at Nishith Desai Associates. We are a research based law firm headquartered in Mumbai with offices in Silicon Valley, Singapore, Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore. And we have been researching Bitcoin since 2012. And in the past, we've helped, the tech industry in a we've uh, we've been helping the tech industry since its inception. So like we were the one law firm that took Infosys, Wipro, Rediff, and a whole bunch of other companies when they were doing their listing on Nasdaq back in the 90s. So we've been involved with the tech community for a very long time, and the internet community as well. We've been lawyers to almost all the top tech firms and all of that. And Bitcoin was just a natural progression because it's Internet of Money. And when dis, I discovered Bitcoins when I was researching privatization of space exploration, and while I was doing that, I landed up on this website called SETI, which was Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and then it rung a bell in my head that when I was studying in California in the early 2000s, I had signed up for SETI, and that was my first experience with decentralized computing. And then when I read the Bitcoin white paper, I'm like, this is, I mean, had I continued being a part of that community, I would have known about Bitcoins when it came out in 2008. And I was really enamored by it. And then at that time in 2012, the only news about Bitcoins was, the dark web and illicit transaction, money laundering, and all those were the conversations around Bitcoin. And I realized very early on that this is a very powerful tool and this can be a very important part of human history. And I took it up to my father, and at first my father was a little bit reluctant. He was like, this is a little dangerous territory we're entering. But then I convinced him, told him that that we need to look into it. And then my team at Nishith Desai Associates, we all got together and we started researching it. And we thought it would take another 10, 15 years for it to actually become commercial. And we had understood the whole, the basics of it. I mean, we are not champions at understanding the whole Bitcoin software and things like that, but what could be the legal issues, we kind of identified them earlier on. And I had the opportunity to invest in Bitcoins, but I took a conscious call that if I want my law firm to represent the crypto community in the highest courts of the country, and if I'm seen as holding too many Bitcoins, then my stance would get weaker. They would not,
Yeah.
they would say there's a conflict of interest and things like that, and you're doing it because you have so many Bitcoins. And so I wanted to avoid those kind of conversations. So even though I saw it at 75, 80, $100, I took a conscious call and said that, look, I'm not going to buy them right now, but I'm here to help the community in whichever way possible.
Great, great. Yeah, again, thank you very much for everything that you, Nishit sir, and your law firm has done. We are perpetually indebted to the community is indebted because of you and the effort. So, talk a little bit, Suril, about the 2020 Supreme Court judgment. And before you talk about it, please share with your audience, with our audience, what do you think, is Bitcoin legal in India?
Bitcoin is 100% legal in India. We gave that opinion actually in 2014. In 2013, on Christmas Eve, the Reserve Bank came out with a notification warning, giving out a warning that people should be, you know, careful with it. And because of that warning, a lot of the crypto exchanges of that time were raided by the Enforcement Directorate, and that come to almost a halt. And they approached me because I had met the founders of this Indian exchange, Uno Coin, which was called Coin Monk at that time. It was a small little exchange, and they had organized the first Bitcoin conference in Bangalore at that time in India, and I went for it, and I met Sunny, Satvik, and Harish at that time, and I became good friends with them, and I told them that we would love to help you, and I invited them over to Mumbai to our offices, and Sunny came over, and then he was explaining Bitcoin to my father and my team and things like that, and he was quite surprised that a lawyer in India of my dad's stature understood Bitcoin pretty much better than any tech
Let me
entrepreneur.
interrupt here. I'm also surprised today, even, and even after 10 years of that, I'm also surprised that not only you and your father understand it so well, but are also putting in years of your almost the reputation at the line, or all have already put it in the past and continuing to put that in effort of the community, and that just reiterates the belief that you and the firm has, and all kudos to you for convincing them and then coming up with the right answers from a legal framework perspective.
Thank you. No, so they came to us, and then we were like, how do we approach, how do we? So at first we were thinking of asking the government to form a committee, but then we realized that if we tell a government to form a committee, it will take 6-7 months, and then until the committee comes out with its decision, the exchanges would be kind of like in a freeze. They wouldn't be operational. And so then we said, let's take the bull by its horn. So we had done our research. We had looked at the Coinage Act. We had looked at the Constitution. We had looked at various other acts, and we realized that uh, nowhere we found that nowhere Bitcoin was not illegal in any such under any such provisions. And then we said, let's take the bull by its horn. So in January of 2014, we told the Bitcoin community of that time to come to our offices, and we organized a press conference. And at the press conference, uh, the 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 members of the crypto community back then came and explained what Bitcoin was and how it worked and all. And at the end of the press conference, we got my father to come and make a statement, and he was convinced that Bitcoin is not illegal under per se under any regulation of India. And he made that statement, but he said that like an ordinary person should be careful, because it's a new technology, so don't just go into it. But he made that statement, and the press picked it up, and within so the headlines of Economic Times and all these other business papers carried Bitcoin's not illegal per se, says Nishith Desai, and that carried a lot of weight. And soon after that came out, the exchanges were back and running within the next 4 5 days of that statement. And after that, we get a call from the enforcement directorate asking us that, you know, sir, what is this Bitcoin? Ye Bitcoin kya cheez hai? And so then we went and we explained to them, and then since the and then after that, there were a lot of instances that occurred where we rescued the crypto community, and then in 2018, there was a Ponzi scheme had been played on the Bitcoin in India, and as a result of which, RBI again came out with telling the banks to block crypto wallet accounts and things like that. So then in 28 May of 2018, we said that, we've been there all this way, so now it's only logical that we take it forward, and we help the community. And at that, so under the so then the crypto community got together, and then they contacted IMAI, which is Internet and Mobile Association of India, and they created a blockchain association, some special interest group for crypto, and then we filed the writ petition, and the writ petition was filed, and then uh, and then that writ petition got heard couple of times, and then they combined it with these. There were other writs which were also filed, so they combined all of that and they took it straight to the Supreme Court, and the judgment came out on. I remember it very clearly because it came out on March 4th, 2020, and a week later we had the COVID shutdown. So people were, I mean, and then in COVID we saw how Bitcoin really rose. That's why its real power was seen, and the judgment is a very detailed judgment, and I request all your viewers to at least read the judgment, before they invest in crypto, because it's helpful, to understand the
Yeah.
judgment. It's a 180-page long judgment. It's long, but it's very informative about what the Supreme Court of India thinks about Bitcoin, and they were very, you know, if you if you read the judgment from the beginning, it seems as if it's going against crypto, but then suddenly there's this climax climatic shift, and they're like, no, this can't. This is, this is perfectly legitimate, and it should be allowed, and the RBI was not able to clearly convince why it's bad and it's wrong and things like that. So that judgment came out, and then since then we've seen crypto exchanges emerge. And during that lull period when while the litigation was going on for 2 years, so some exchanges came up, and they started, peer to peer and things like that started gaining momentum, and then finally in 2019 2020, you know major investment into crypto exchanges. Some of the unicorns in India were created through crypto exchanges.
Excellent. Thank you so much for taking us through that. We will give the link in our show notes, but highly encourage everyone to at least skim through the judgment, even if you don't want to read 180 pages. And as you rightly mentioned, and I was reading this on my flight to Abu Dhabi again, third time or the fourth time, because every time I would start, I would leave it somewhere around 40, 50 pages, and then I finally, it was a like a 16-hour flight. So I said, this is my task. I had printed it and I kept it, and I kept reading, and I said, no, this doesn't seem to be going saying in the right direction, as you rightly mentioned. And then when I read the last section on proportionality,
Right.
it was amazing to see how that judgment. But yeah, it's a very enlightening document, and thank you once again for all the effort that you guys have done. So today, as we stand, Suril, what is, if someone asks you as a lawyer,
Hmm.
saying, or your firm as a lawyer, and this is just maybe a repetition, is buying Bitcoin or storing Bitcoin or holding Bitcoin legal in India for individuals, for companies, or for any other kind of bodies or institutions?
Yes, it's perfectly legal. Like the Supreme Court has clearly said that you know, it's disproportionate for the anyone to ban it, and uh, it's completely legal for anyone to own a Bitcoin. And uh, that would be my answer. Like there is nothing illegal about owning Bitcoins. In fact, the government is even taxing it, right? There's a capital gains on virtual digital assets, and Bitcoin is one of those. Uh, and uh, and and if it's being taxed, and the government is collecting revenue on a product like Bitcoin or other VDAs, uh, that that there is this theory in taxation that there is no taxation without representation. So even under those contexts, I mean, you've taxed it, so it has to be, you know, you uh, there is uh, there is no illegality in owning or buying Bitcoin in India.
Great. Thank you so much for clarifying, because many times our customers come up and say, "Oh, I've heard this, and this is some negative thing, negative perception. Oh, is it legal?" This is the most common question that we get. So, hearing directly from you, and the reiteration that everyone should is encouraged to go and look at the Supreme Court judgment of 4th of March 2020. If you Google Supreme Court judgment 4th of March 2020, you should be able to
IMAI
find.
versus RBI.
Yeah, you should be able to find that judgment, and you should be able to read that. So Suril, you and your firm is highly accomplished and could do hundreds of other things. Why do you choose to spend your energy in Bitcoin? What does Bitcoin mean to you?
I mean, when I was researching Bitcoins, I realized that for the last 300-400 years, we've had a banking system which is not significantly innovated, and we've had no alternative to the banking system, like we are compelled to use it, and uh, like there is no alternative, right? The only other alternative is that you either keep your money with you or you keep it in the bank, and the state mandates you to use the banks. So I felt that this system is and it's a very skewed system. Like it's like if you want to send uh, $1 million cross border, there is the transaction fee is quite low. But if you are sending $10 or $100, the transaction fee is pretty high. And this means that like the people who really need to send the money find it more difficult, and Bitcoin solves that, right? Because of the low transaction costs and things like that. So I became, and I realized that if a country like India, this was calculation back in 2015 types, if India allowed even 10% of its remittance market to use things like Bitcoin and the blockchain, India would end up saving close to $7.5 billion each year, which goes to you know uh, companies like Western Union and MoneyGram and things like that. And if India was able to save that $7.5 billion, it could be used for so many other better purposes.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
that's such a great point. Yeah,
and
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 I
and,
think
and for a
if
country
you,
like India,
so,
India is one of the countries which is the highest recipients of remittances, because we have all these you know workers from India who go and work in the Middle East on the oil fields and things like that. And this community has not been addressed very well, because these people have to they have to struggle day in and day out, and for them Bitcoin and crypto become and especially blockchain becomes a boon. So I've, and also, like, I realized that uh, the 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 central banks across the world have been printing money like there's no tomorrow. There is no, there is, I mean, if you look at the devaluation of all the fiat money, it and the inflation and all of that. So I felt that, and also the community was a very uh, uh, forthcoming and very open about all these talks. Like, there have been so many books written about Bitcoin and its benefits, and I think what happened is that there's a perception that needs to be changed about Bitcoin. Like, it's it's like, you know the the entire mainstream media was at one point completely vehemently speaking the same tone, saying that Bitcoin is bad, Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. They call it a tulip mania. They called it all sorts of things. And every time they said Bitcoin is dead, it kept on rising after that. You know, so I felt that I mean, and Bitcoin was something, the philosophical side of it, right? Like this idea uh, of a borderless, peer to peer, censorship resistant uh, product, which is a good exchange for value and a good store of value, is available for anyone in the world to buy. Typically a product like Bitcoin, if it was in the private hands, it would have first gone to the people at the top of the pyramid
Correct.
of the economic chain. But Bitcoin came from the bottom, right? I mean, the people on fringes of society were the ones who are saying, like, I have lost my house because of the of foreclosure. I have lost everything. My money is worthless, and I have nothing. So Bitcoin brought hope to that bunch of people, and people who bought it. Like, there are people who have bought it, who've gotten Bitcoin for free, right? If you go back in time,
Yeah. They
and
used to be Bitcoin faucets.
exactly, and the only thing that now I'm concerned about is that I hope that, even though the prices have gone up, it's great for the market. I appreciate what BlackRocks and the Fidelities and the big institutional investors are doing, but I hope that the access to Bitcoin does not get restricted. That's my only concern about Bitcoin, uh, because right now you can buy Bitcoin as little as $10, right? If you go, you can buy $10 worth of Sats every day, and
Yeah.
things like that. I hope that does not change. That's my only fear right now.
Yeah, yeah. As you rightly pointed out, US dollar is devaluing because of extra printing of US dollar. Just in the COVID time, 4 trillion, 3.5, 4 trillion extra dollars were created. And everything else in the world has a direct correlation to US dollar. So compared to the US dollar, the Indian rupees has lost value by 70-80%. So if you remember, in the early 2000, the exchange rate between US dollar and INR was around 40-45, and it is around 80. So so that itself is like 50% of the value lost, and then dollar losing value. So it's like a double whammy, like
But
dollar
yeah,
losing its value and then INR losing its value on top of the dollar,
exactly.
compared to the dollars. So I fully agree that inflation and currency losing its purchasing power is a big issue, and that was one of the key motivators for the cyberpunks, and at least in the
Early days.
early days. And I also fully agree with you that there is these large entities which are, as you were rightly mentioning, BlackRock now has. I think 400,000 bitcoins, and the AUM of total all the ETFs put together in the US have more than a million coins. While that's the most successful ETF in the history of ETF, and but there is that risk of whether an individual can still interact and will get access to UTXOs and Satoshis directly or not.
Right.
Yeah. Great. So, Cyril, now with your experience of more than 10 years, more than a decade in this space, because there are not many people in this space. So, still, when I speak to many of my friends who might be either lawyers or bankers or tech workers, many of them are not yet initiated to Bitcoin, and they still don't have. They have no understanding of it, and they hold no and they have no allocation to it. So if I am a successful um, um, uh, successful person in my corporate life, and I might be a lawyer, banker, tech worker, what is your, and I have no Bitcoin allocation. I generally store my value in stocks, real estate, some FDs, some cash, maybe gold. What is your advice to that person? Should that person care about Bitcoin and think about Bitcoin, or is it okay to not care about Bitcoin?
I think everyone should pay attention to Bitcoin, and I feel that they should, this is my personal opinion. This has nothing to do with the law firm, and I'm not a financial advisor,
Yeah, none
you
of
know,
this is financial advice. Please do your research. This is only for
and
entertainment and education purpose.
and I feel that do your research on Bitcoin. I I request anyone who's trying to get into Bitcoin uh, to go and read Saifuddin's book, The Bitcoin Standard and the Fiat Standard. I request them that they look at the charts of all the information. There's so much information about Bitcoin out there. Do your own research, and and if you are convinced that this is the future, then allocate anywhere between 2 to 5% of your total portfolio. I mean, start small. And then if you're convinced, then you can make the big moves, right? Because right now to buy one Bitcoin is almost $106,000, right? And if you compare the price rise of Bitcoin to gold, I mean, gold became a precious commodity about 3-4 thousand years ago, and it peaked at about 3,000 odd dollars very recently, while Bitcoin just started in 2009 and it has reached $100,000. So people are seeing more, I mean, Bitcoin has, at least till now, has proven to be more valuable than gold. There was a time when, you know, I mean, it's right now one Bitcoin can buy you a kilogram of gold, which is, so if you look at it from that perspective, it shifts, and also when I look at Bitcoin, I feel that it should be. I mean, everyone talks of it as a financial asset. Everyone talks about it as a secure, whether it's a financial asset, whether it's a security, or what is it, So, I mean, from my basic understanding, I feel Bitcoin is like weights and kilograms, right? Weights and Measures Act, right? Just like you use miles and kilometers to measure distance, you can use the Bitcoin scale to measure how much money you can print. So it becomes like a standard, right? So if you look at it from that perspective, because there are only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoins, so price discovery and price uh, uh, everything, it's a scarcity based product, and you can measure. So if you're going to print uh, X number of dollars or rupees or whatever, and then you say you can measure it against the Bitcoin scale and say, okay, if we print $1 trillion or more, then the Bitcoin price will reach 106,000. But if you print less, then the Bitcoin price will, so it moves along that scale. So it's like a tool of measurement for the governments. So if the governments treat it that way, then Bitcoin can be a very beneficial tool. Because right now we are pegging everything to just one currency, which is the US dollar,
Yeah,
and now we have an alternative. Because today we are in a in a world where internet is everywhere. It's like become like a fundamental right to have internet.
yeah. Almost
And
like people might ask for internet before they ask for water.
yeah, exactly. And we are so dependent on it, and Bitcoin is just the natural progression of internet. It's internet of money. It's like, you know opening a bank account shouldn't be so difficult, but because it is difficult, things like products like blockchain and all really make it better. It should be, in my opinion, it should be as easy to open a bank account as it is to open an email account. Once we reach that stage, you know and 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 I mean, not everything about the banking system is bad. There are some good things about it also, and
Yeah,
we got to recognize that. And we can create like a hybrid. Like, I'm not saying a hybrid which has this, like, it's it's like right now, if you have money in your bank and if you try to withdraw all of it, the bank won't allow you.
yeah,
So, I mean, and especially in Bitcoins and crypto, it's not your keys, not your coins, is a very popular mantra. But that also has its own dangers, right? Because you download it onto any of the cold storage wallets and you lose it, right? Or you misplace your keys or your passcodes and things like that. I mean, I feel that this process needs to get simpler, and the simpler it gets, the easier it is for transactions. Right now, people are only using it for a store of value, but eventually it should be like, people should be more free to spend it, because that's where the true test of the asset will really come through.
yeah, yeah. I think so many points that you've covered, and I love your analogy of it being a measuring scale. Like if it's like a weights and measures thing. So 1 kg is 1 kg, whether you measure
Exactly.
potatoes with it, or whether you measure onions with it, or measure anything. 1
Exactly.
kg, the amount of weight is fixed and it remains like 1 kg. Similar to that, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. The price against US dollar or Indian rupees or any other currency or gold would change based on what is the inflation or what is the amount of new monetary units which are created on dollars, versus Bitcoin will always remain the same because it's 21 million. Like a fixed 1 kg
Right.
is always 1 kg. You
Right.
go anywhere in the world, it
Yeah.
is 1 kg. Similarly, it is one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, and you could have different units which are comparing to it. So it becomes like a neutral tool for the whole world to measure against. In the
Right.
absence of that tool, we use US dollar as a tool, and that US dollar as a tool, if I understand correctly of what you were wanting to say, is a imperfect tool, because that US dollar's value itself is coming down in purchasing power. But if everyone else is using that as a tool, there is an inherent assumption that US dollar is fixed, but
Right.
that's not true.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
That that's
that's
that that's the way I look at it.
yeah, that's such a great point. That's amazing. Yeah, that looking at it as a neutral tool for the world, and that neutral tool is not controlled by any one set of individuals, country, or anyone else. Like gold used to be a tool, and gold was not controlled by anyone in the digital world. Bitcoin is the superior form of that tool.
Right.
Yeah, and I also love your second point, that you were reiterating that um, uh, the ease of being able to use Bitcoin has to the UI UX and the ease of it has to is has improved a lot. I'm sure from
Yeah,
2012 and 13
yeah.
when it used to be a command line that you will have to go and create a wallet on that. Compared to that, you can easily go like an email client. You can there can be a lot of wallets that you can very quickly download and get a Bitcoin address, but still holding your own keys, as you were saying, not your keys, not your coins, is still a little complex. Now, multiple multi-sig solutions which are coming up is making it simpler and simpler, but it is still complex, and there's definitely an opportunity for the community to continue to work on that space.
Right.
Yeah, great. What do you think, Suril, about there's so many coins out there in the market now? I think there are more coins in the market than than anything else, or even all the stocks to put together in the world. There might be more
Yeah.
coins in the market. So, what do you think? Where does Bitcoin stand in your understanding versus others, and how is Bitcoin different than any other coin?
I mean, I wouldn't go as far as like Max Kaiser, how he talks about shit coins, and I wouldn't go as far as that. I would say I mean, people are innovating. People, because I look at uh, Bitcoin white paper as a theorem, like in maths and physics, you have theorems. So, Bitcoin white paper serves like a theorem, and Satoshi Nakamoto is someone like Pythagoras, right, who came up with the Pythagoras theorem. Now, with the Pythagoras theorem, you can build pyramids, and you can build missiles, and you can build whatever you want with it once you know the formula. But that formula does not change, right? So the Bitcoin formula is not going to change, but people will look at the shortcomings of Bitcoins and try to build, you know, other systems, so and but but the bit it's I mean, people are trying to emulate what Bitcoin is, but the problem is that most of these other coins are centralized. They have a marketing department. They have kind of like a CEO. They have kind of promoters. They have all of this. But Bitcoin does not have any of this. Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever that entity is, uh, made sure that that it stays accessible and open for anyone to play around with, right? And I think in the near future, the Bitcoin white paper should be taught to children as young as when they're in the seventh or eighth grade. They should start the principles, because that education needs to go out. That Bitcoin has there is no owner entity of Bitcoin. It's just there. And people have come together. It shows that people believe in something. They believe in the prospects it offers. They believe in it, and it's just like it's just like a formula. And once and there is no trade secret in Bitcoin, right? It's all on the blockchain. So it's like, if it's a recipe, right? And with that recipe, it's it's like when uh, it's like you adding salt to your lemon juice, right? And Bitcoin is like salt, right? Anyone, if you want salt, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you want to create a salt pan or something, you need those licenses and things like that. But for Bitcoins, it's available to anyone and everyone.
Great point, Cyril, on that. So now, for a young or for a person who's not spend a lot of time understanding this and is hearing about all of this cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin for the first time, he or she is saying, "Oh, this is now at 100,000. There's this new coin which is so cheap. So maybe I should buy that new coin versus Bitcoin." What do you think? Your what would your advice be of saying how do I select Bitcoin versus any other crypto?
I would say that, see, I mean, Bitcoin is the mothership, right? Bitcoin is like it it's like the World Wide Web, right? There are so many websites. There was a time when there were so many internet companies in the during the Y2K era. There were so many. We had so many search engines, right? And then we centralized, and then it became only Google, right? And now, if I told you that this, would you invest in Google or would you invest in Tim Berners-Lee? It's that situation, right? Tim Berners-Lee gave the World Wide Web formula to the whole world. And because it was not related to banking at that time, he could get away with it. But Satoshi Nakamoto, that entity, had to deal with, really major players. So they had to choose to be anonymous. So I say that, you if you're going to get into crypto and if you don't have Bitcoin, then you're not in crypto. You need
Got
some exposure to Bitcoin. I mean, that's up to your own decision how much exposure you want. But I would say at least 60% of your crypto portfolio should be allocated to Bitcoin.
Got it. So, what I'm listening from this, or what I'm interpreting, is you're saying Bitcoin is the base protocol. It is the protocol layer. There will be companies and infrastructure which will be built on top of it. So, it's equivalent to the internet on top of internet. Google, Facebook, Amazon, all of these
Right.
companies were built. But we as individuals didn't have an opportunity to have a stake in the internet, or a value of saying, oh, I own this part of the internet, but that equivalent opportunity exists of saying I own this part of the whole blockchain crypto infrastructure, which is Bitcoin. So if you own some part of, or if you think that this is a transformational technology, then you have an opportunity to hold some part of it in the base protocol, and that is Bitcoin. So it is definitely advisable that while you might choose to own some things which will be built on top of Bitcoin, and that might be an individual decision based on your understanding of what is that it getting built. But you also have an opportunity to own the base infrastructure layer, and it'll be highly like if we have to push ourselves to put a number, 60% of that number is what you recommend should be in your opinion. And again, this is not financial advice, it's just
Yeah.
for
I mean,
education and entertainment.
my portfolio is almost 90% Bitcoin, but because I believe in it, and
Right.
uh, I feel, I mean, and I'm not saying that all other coins are bad coins. I'm just saying that it's like if I give you gold and if I give you aluminum, which one are you going to buy as a
Excellent. Excellent analogy. Yeah, I would take gold all day, every day. Okay, so some of our customers and some of our listeners come back and say, "Oh, Suril, you started in 2013, 14, so it's easy for you to say Bitcoin is the best and you have 90% allocation to Bitcoin. But am I too late for Bitcoin? It's at 100K or 106K today, and yeah, the next other altcoin is for pennies. Am I too late at 106K? What would you say to that person?
Oh wow. I mean, compared to me, you are late. I mean, if you compare yourself to me, then obviously you'd feel that you are late. But we are still very early in the game. The institutions have just started coming in. It's been, and people are, just waking up to the idea of I mean, I would say if you invest in Bitcoin right now, it's like investing in the early days of the internet. It's like investing in an internet company in, I would say, 1990 or 91. It's we at that stage. I mean, if you had come to me 2 years prior to this, I would have said it's like equivalent to investing in Apple or Microsoft in the 1970s, right? So we still have a long way to go, and I would recommend that people look at it as a long-term asset. Look at it as you know, people get Bitcoin at the price they deserve.
I love that meme.
And I feel that it's don't have a FOMO. I mean, that FOMO mindset that, oh, you missed out, and because you have missed out, Bitcoin is a completely bad tool. A lot of people think that because they have missed out on Bitcoin as an opportunity to get in at really, pennies to the dollar, they feel that they should completely discard it as a innovation. I mean, it's the ingenuity of the human intellect. Uh, it's uh, it's it's like I feel that Bitcoin has brought the world closer to each other. I mean, if you look at Bitcoin from I mean, one of the major case studies that I'm still working towards is on the use of Bitcoins and other crypto for refugees, right? Like, you have all these political refugees who have to leave their country, and their central banks have collapsed, and many of them don't know how to transfer their wealth out, and you know tools like Bitcoin and crypto are very beneficial to that community as well. So, I mean, it's never too late. I mean, uh, in in my mother tongue Gujarati, we have a saying called "Jagya te Aarthi Sawar." So it basically means that from the time you wake up, it's morning.
Yeah, yeah. In Hindi, they say the same thing as "Jab jago tab savera."
So
So
so I mean, go. I mean, be. I mean, I mean, what I feel about it is that there is this opportunity for people uh, to explore something different, something new, something which everyone had written off, but it continues to rise. So obviously there is something in it. So it's never too late.
yeah, yeah. As they say, Bitcoin has died multiple times,
Yeah,
and every time someone says, and there's this website which says
yeah,
Bitcoin obituaries, and
yeah,
it talks about since it was pennies and less than a dollar, people have been talking about Bitcoin is dead and Bitcoin is dead. Some of the people who talk about whether it's too late, I also say that yes, it was great if you could get into Bitcoin when it was like in 2013, 12, 13, when Suril was able to discover it. But also the risk profile of Bitcoin from then to now has completely shifted.
exactly.
Imagine being able to go to only a command line interface, and only a techie would be able to see it. How would you store it? There were no hardware devices, there was no education, you have to self learn yourself. So for a common person, the risk spectrum of it was very, very high risk. You
Very
might
nice.
think that oh, it is you got it for such a early price, but the risk for that person who got in was so different than the risk it is today, when
Right.
the ETF have been launched and big institutional money is already endorsing it. BlackRock is going and saying that if you're not allocating 5% of your capital, you are getting left behind. So that's the risk profile is completely different, not only from the kind of institutions which have seen it, the kind of testing which humanity has done on the code at 2012-13. It is pre block size wars and stuff, so you don't know what was the protocol strength also,
Right.
and they were elements in that protocol which were still unproven. So from a risk reward ratio perspective, I fully agree with what you're saying, that that it is still really early from a global adoption perspective. And if every individual, every family, every company, and every country will own Bitcoin, because it's just a measurement scale, as you rightly mentioned,
Yeah.
and everyone will have to use this measurement scale. You will just be forced to use it because the world will use it. From that perspective, it's still early in the global adoption. And and ultimately, everyone buys Bitcoin at the price they deserve, as you rightly said. So kudos to you and your team for deserving
Thank
a
you.
very good entry price and holding, because I've also heard of stories of those who have entered at some point. It's really hard not only to own, also buy, but also to hold, right? If it goes up 10x, it's
Yeah.
really takes a lot of courage to keep holding it, because it goes up 10x and then goes down 5x, and then it's really really hard for people to keep holding it. So kudos to everyone who's bought it early, and took the time to understand it, and then held through it and continued understanding and educating, like you and your law firm has done till now.
Thank you.
So, what do you think, Suril, about custody? How to hold you? I know you said that not your keys, not your coins. What is your any thoughts, advice, or recommendation how to custody Bitcoin?
See, I think it's when it comes to the question of custody, it's always better to be in your possession, but it has its own set of nuances and its own set of complications. And I've been lucky because I've known the founders of all these exchanges, and also so for me it's it's like I would say you keep some in your custody and some on certain you know uh, uh, dexes or custodian services which are virtual. Because to keep it on a ledger or a Trezor or any of those wallets is a great idea. It's wonderful, but it's also dangerous, right? Because I mean, you could just lose your wallet, or you could just lose your ledger. It could, we've heard of so many boating accidents, right? And every and and also, it's. I mean, you 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 need to. I mean, it's a very for custody when it comes to like I'm a very trusting person, and so I you know trust even the exchanges. There's nothing wrong with them because they have been they helped me buy it so they can help me store it, and now the exchanges are also coming up with solutions which are hybrid of cold and hot wallets. So I mean, as the system evolves, as the uh, as more people realize that they need to have, so there would I feel that it's like you trust Gmail for your emails, right? Everyone uses Gmail. You have a business, account on Gmail. You have WhatsApp and all of that. You're trusting your data with all these giants, and yeah, they do use it. They do send you targeted advertisements and all, but at least I mean, I just recently lost my iPhone and I had to reboot all my uh, software, like all my applications, like
Contacts
Face,
and
and it was so easy to do it. I thought
yeah,
I was like panicking about it's going to. I need to remember this. I need to remember that. I need to do all of this, and that exercise taught me that look. I mean, it was so easy. All I needed is my phone number. So like if you can create a system where you can it can be I mean obviously this is a word. It requires a lot of techies to work towards it, but it should be like just like you have your mobile phone number, you have your Bitcoin wallet address, which is a phone number, or it's linked to your phone and we can I mean there is a lot of innovation that
yeah,
will happen.
yeah,
you and if you are taking into self custody, then you got to be extra
yeah,
careful.
yeah,
Where are you going to store it? I mean, if you leave it at in your house, under your lock and key, then there's a possibility that it can get stolen.
yeah.
So there
There
is
is a
advantage,
trade-off.
there
There
is
is
a
a
trade
trade-off.
off.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you got to see what you're comfortable with. If you're
yeah,
comfortable with cold storage, do cold storage. If you're comfortable with exchanges, do exchange. But also make sure that you don't put all your eggs in one exchange. You know,
yeah,
distribute them.
yeah,
Put it in different wallets rather than keeping all in one. And because if you keep it in one and then you have uh, a hack or something, then I mean, it can all go.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Fully agree with you. So I think custody is a spectrum. It is not a
Yeah,
one solution, one size fits all kind of a thing. Early in the stage of your understanding of Bitcoin, getting off zero, getting started is more important than worrying about custody, is what I feel. And once you start spending a little bit of time, or once you have a little substantial assets on Bitcoin, definitely it's important for the person to start understanding custody options.
yeah,
And in the discovery and understanding and learning phase, of course, understanding what is self custody, then understanding what are the various forms of multi sig custody which can which can distribute the risk and still be convenient. And the evolution on custody is still early. It is still an early asset class, and this custody solution will become easier and easier. But the meme still holds true. If it's not your keys,
yeah,
then likely it's not your coins.
yeah.
It's someone else's coins, and they are letting you have an IOU on that. Excellent. That's all that we had. It was so much fun talking to Cyril. Anything
Thank you.
else that you would want to share with the audience?
No, I mean, just for me, Bitcoin is a dream come true. Like it's like for me, I'm at a stage where I feel that from now on, whatever happens to Bitcoin, I am, I will, I'll be, in support of it no matter what happens. Like, it's been a very liberating experience for me, the whole crypto journey. It's taught me a lot of things. It's introduced me to a lot of wonderful people, and it in times of despair, and when other things are not going right, Bitcoin has been that. It has been my rescue for a lot of situations. It's like even for like I don't know what it. I'm still trying to grapple with the fact that wow, it's at 106K, right? I mean, who would have thought that
Yeah,
code would be so valuable?
yeah,
And it's end of the day, it's just code, right?
yeah,
I mean, very simply put. And also if you look at and this code is it's and we are just exchanging code end of the day,
yeah,
and
yeah,
code has become valuable,
yeah,
right? Code is as valuable, more valuable than gold now.
yeah, yeah,
So I feel it's a great time. It's a I mean, I feel that the tech community, I'm so indebted to the tech community, from the cypherpunks to the modern day uh, you know uh, Bitcoin degens, if you want to call them.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
all the hacker community, all of that. All that community has really uh, uh, all of that has really brought it together, and now it's now flourishing.
yeah. We forgot to talk about one, Suril. That I know that there's at least one corporate that is putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and yeah, I'm no pressure on naming or anything. Sure, feel free. But do you think that that is also one of the viable options for CFOs and CEOs of
Yeah,
companies to look at Bitcoin
I
as
mean,
a treasury reserve asset?
if you look at companies like MicroStrategy, Tesla, they all are doing it, right? So it's only logical that other companies follow the suit, the journey. And I mean,
And from an
obviously,
Indian perspective, if any CFO or CEO listening to this wants to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet, do you guys, is it okay if they reach out to you guys and figure
yeah,
out
yeah,
what is the legalities of it?
sure,
And would it be okay to say at least one or few of them are already working on this with you guys?
yes, yes.
Excellent, excellent. That's such a great note to to finish on. Thank you so much once again,
Thank you.
Suril, for your time,
Thank you so
and
much.
I thank you and your dad once again, Nishit sir. Please say thanks to him.
Actually,
Thanks to
the
him from
thanks
my
goes,
side.
there are a lot of people who are
Yeah.
involved in it.
Yes.
Obviously, it's not just me and my dad, we are just the
Yes.
face of it. But
Yes.
we had
Yes.
a great team of lawyers, all our lawyers who have, contributed to this journey. I mean, I respect all of them, and I think the legal community will have a important role to play in the coming future.
Completely. So for individuals, it's already legal. You have heard it from Suril himself. You can go and look at the Supreme Court judgment. And if any corporate, any CEO and CFOs of the company want to put Bitcoin on balance sheet, that's also legal. That's already happening. Feel free to reach out to Cyril. And I'm hoping that sooner or later, India will put Bitcoin on its balance sheet.